Good afternoon, it's 2 p.m. This is Market View, the final episode this week. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Lungilele Magagula. The Easter season is a vital period for Eswatini, drawing a substantial number of visitors, including international tourists and Emaswati living abroad who return home during this time. Visitors come for various reasons such as leisure, religious adherence, and also social purposes. This influx is crucial not only for local accommodation providers, but also for generating employment and empowering communities. During the Easter period under review, Eswatini welcomed a total of 17,225 international visitors, largely driven by strong demand from regional markets. And additionally, 22,265 Emaswati residing outside the country returned, contributing significantly to spending on day visits and dining. The head of marketing at the Eswatini Tourism Authority, Chunki Dlamini, will join us in studio today for a discussion on how these numbers are important components of the country's tourism GDP. Then later, Senator Spear closes the program with today's financial markets. For now, let's go straight to our first story. The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Rackenberg, says Eswatini will not implement the proposed 0.5% VAT increase following that South Africa has reached a decision to forgo the increase. The Minister for Finance said this when responding to a question on whether Eswatini will increase the VAT following these latest developments.
The House of Assembly has adopted the regulations to increase value-added tax following that South Africa had announced an increase of 0.5% for the current financial year. South Africa has since reversed the decision. The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Rackenberg, explained what these latest developments mean for Eswatini's proposed 0.5% VAT increase.
We've noticed that South Africa has made a decision to not go ahead with a 0.5% increase in the VAT. And in Eswatini, we will follow suit and do our best to do likewise. The House of Assembly has passed the regulations, increasing with 0.5%. But until the regulations have passed Senate, we cannot implement it. And so we will, even though we will be tabling the regulations at Senate, because there are other elements in the regulations that we'll need to pass, we'll be speaking to Senate, which we've already been doing, and asking Senate to withdraw the 0.5% from the regulations, meaning that if it goes through Senate, that one cannot apply the 0.5% VAT in Eswatini, because if we do put 0.5% and South Africa does not, as it would have been chaos the other way around, this way around it will be chaos too. And so as a country, we no longer want to pursue the 0.5% VAT. And so with it not being urgent anymore for the 1st of May, even though the regulations will be tabled today, Senate will be considering it and will be in discussions with Senate to remove the 0.5% from the regulations, and then obviously go back to House of Assembly and make a correction there at a later stage so that the other elements of the VAT regulations can still be passed, but this time without the 0.5% on VAT.
The minister had previously explained that Eswatini needed to also increase the VAT as a strategic alignment with South Africa to maintain smooth trade flows given the Lilangeni is pegged to the rand. The Ministry of Finance in South Africa, in its website, stated that the decision to forego the increase follows extensive consultations with political parties and careful consideration of the recommendations of the parliamentary committees. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, for Minkosi Nzinisa, Mbabane.
The Eswatini Standards Authority is planning to engage the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency in efforts to strengthen compliance with national standards. The aim is to find a long-term solution that will ensure all procuring entities follow laid-down guidelines, thereby improving the quality of goods and services delivered to public institutions and parastatals. This was revealed by the Executive Director, Ncamiso Mhlanga, during a training workshop hosted by the authority at the George Hotel in Manzini, where representatives from various public and private entities gathered to learn more about the over 400 standards the country currently has and their implementation.
While it is Eswatini's responsibility to develop the standards, it is not Eswatini's responsibility to implement them. The regulators should then adopt these standards into their systems and policies and implement anything they do in the health sector, agriculture sector, all across all sectors. They should then implement using the standards. However, we are noticing a low uptake as Eswasa in terms of the use of the standards. So this workshop, we have organized all the regulators, the people that we think should be implementing the standards. We are saying to them, can you take the standards and implement them so that aspects of quality in the country are improved? One of the bigger gaps that we are having as a country is that we, government, as the biggest procurer, is not the aspect of quality, buying quality services and integrating standards into that is not incorporated. So we also want to ensure that as we do procurement, can the ESPRA incorporate aspects of standards into their procurement process?
Undersecretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Cebile Nhlabathi, calls for all entities and sectors to adhere to standards.
Standards are the backbone of modern economies. They underpin quality, safety, and efficiency across all sectors, enabling businesses to compete in regional and global markets. In Eswatini, the adoption and the implementation of robust standards has already begun to yield tangible results, improving food safety, enhancing consumer protection, and fostering innovation.
Muzima Phanga from the Road Transportation Department says they do all they can to follow standards.
We are doing much we can to clean our legislation and to ensure that all the standards that we are talking about here today are infused into the legislation.
According to SWASA, the country currently has over 400 standards. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Fuminkosi Nzinisa, Manzini.
Well, that's it for our business news. Thank you for staying with us. After the break, we're joined by the head of marketing at the Eswatini Tourism Authority, Chunki Dlamini. Stay with us.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Market View. Thank you for staying with us. During this year's Easter period, which was last weekend, Eswatini experienced a remarkable surge in tourism numbers, welcoming a total of 39.490 visitors, a significant 38.9% increase compared to the same period in 2024. According to new data from the Eswatini Tourism Authority, 17,225 international visitors entered the country, driven largely by strong demand from regional markets. To help us make sense of these numbers and what they mean for the economic future of tourism in Eswatini, Chunki Mdluli, head of marketing and communications in the authority, joins us in studio. Chunki, very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Very remarkable numbers, I must say, indeed. So yes, we know that Easter season is a vital period for Eswatini, and we see that there's a surge. Tell us more about it.
Okay, Lou, thank you so much. I think you've just unpacked it. I think we're quite excited because our goal is basically to reach pre-COVID levels. But when we compare 2024 with 2025, we can see an increase of 38.9%. Although pre-COVID levels were sitting just slightly over 41,000 in terms of visitor numbers, we haven't reached the pre-COVID levels, but it's really promising because we're sitting at 39,490. So it's really promising. I think some of the initiatives that we do, the campaigns and push marketing factors and also promoting the destination within Eswatini locally and regionally is a contributing factor to Eswatini receiving the numbers. But as you have said, that we received a total of over 17,000 international visitors, and then the other 22,000 were actually Eswatini residing outside the kingdom. But they do contribute a lot in terms of day visits and also visiting destinations within Eswatini and actually spending, because it's more on visitor numbers, the spend, and the number of nights stayed in Eswatini.
Yeah, so it's not just visitors that are coming for the Easter services. It's also just people coming for leisure and social purposes.
Exactly. It's different reasons, because although Easter is more aligned to regional activities, we know people want to go to church, but there are those people that actually don't go to church. So we also need to make a provision for those, because people want to go out. For example, if you're working in South Africa for the longest time and you want to come home for Easter, it's definitely not going to stay in the house. So you want to go out and actually visit tourism sites within Eswatini. So that is why it accounted for over 22,000 Eswatini coming back home and actually spending more money on tourism establishments.
Yeah, speaking of tourism establishments, they were all booked this past Easter season. People were spending, they were dining, engaging in activities, visiting tourist attractions. What was the situation like?
We're quite excited because one of our key pillars and our targets to ensure that we increase the tourism spend and the spend in Eswatini, which means we need to increase the average length of stay from 1.3 nights to 3 nights. So when you look at the accommodation statistics, the hotel occupancy was actually sitting at 63%, accounting for hotel occupancy sitting at 62%, and then B&Bs, which is bed and breakfast, 54%, and then guest houses, they accounted for 44%, and then game and nature occupancy was sitting at 41%, which is really impressive, because sometimes there are those ups and downs, especially for Easter season. So we're quite happy with the room occupancy, which is 63%. When we compare to the previous year of 2024, we're just sitting at 55% room occupancy. So when you look at the sub-regions, for example, how the performance was in terms of the towns, Babani was leading by 71%, followed by Ezulwini and then Manzini 52%. So Babani took the lead, but it's always vis-a-vis. It's always Ezulwini, Babane, then Manzini. But this time around, more people were staying around Babane, followed by Ezulwini, then Manzini. So which is a good sign for us, because we don't want to regress and go back to the negatives, Lou. Although we haven't reached pre-COVID levels, but we're quite happy about the occupancy rate for this Easter season.
All right, so when I see the stats here, I see that South Africa sent 3,900 more visitors than last year. Was this by design, or it was a coincidence?
I think it's a coincidence because you can't really tell what's going to happen. Our responsibility is to market, but after marketing, then you will see the results after you've done the collection of the data. But South Africa, as we know, they are our neighboring countries. With Mozambique, they are also always leading in terms of source market visitations. So this year, when we compare to 2024, we actually received over 13,000 visitors. When we look at 2024, where we received 9.3. Same was like Mozambique, we received 1.5 for the Easter season. When we compare to 2024, we're just sitting at over 1.4. Although there are a few markets, especially for the international markets, the Dutch are always leading. We also experience a lot of Dutch people coming from the Netherlands, with just over 112 visitations, and also the UK with 89, and also Malawi. Malawi is an emerging market. We have a lot of Malawians, and so strange because we don't do any promotions there, but you can see a lot of visitors coming from Malawi. But most of the time, it's mainly for business purposes, but they do also enjoy the leisure purposes as well. So I'm quite excited that Malawi is an emerging market for Eswatini.
Yeah, so I must commend the authority, Chunki. It's clear that you're doing exceptional work with marketing the country. How are you actually doing it? What's your strategy? I mean, if you are receiving tourists from the Dutch, Netherlands, Germany, Malawi, and so forth.
I think we're guided by the strategy. The strategy stipulates that we really need to do a push marketing factor. So we can't just do one and the same thing over and over again. And this year was so unique because we partnered with influencers, local influencers, content creators, because we understand that you can't just push the destination on our own as the tourism authority. But if you work with the content creators to push the content, because ours, we don't own any single product. Yeah. We work with the private sector, but the people that are going to actually lead the process of pushing the establishments and the tourism attraction sites, it's actually the influencers. So we worked with about 6 influencers, and the engagements, the reactions, the positive feedbacks, I think it was a positive for us. And we'll be actually scheduling the report next week and share with the media on how we performed, because for every campaign that you do, you need to measure it. Yeah. So we'll be able to see next week how we actually performed, but we can see the results. Emaswati actually want to go out and know more about their country, because we don't want Emaswati Lu to go outside the country, because if you go outside the country, Lu, you're taking Emalangeni into South Africa and Mozambique. We want you to stay within Eswatini, because if you do so, it's going to contribute to the tourism spend, which then gives us the tourism receipts that we're looking for. As you know, that by 2027, we should have recorded 2 million visitors, 2 billion receipts, and increase the average length of stay from 1.3 to 3 nights.
All right. So I recall that, I think it was this year or last year, we had 2 major accidents, I think, when you put a post. Was the infrastructure ready for welcoming these tourists? And what lessons can we say we have learned from that?
I think that was just an eye-opener because we do sit in the stakeholder management forum with our SA counterparts, although the accident happened on the SA side, but it does affect somebody that wants to cross over to Eswatini. Actually, they were ready for the Easter. Everything was put in place. Hence, Ngwenya was leading in terms of the numbers because it's a 24-hour border. So even if you want to travel at night, it makes sense for people. Even if you're from work, you can travel to Eswatini. So I think South Africa is working around the clock to ensure, with Eswatini, of course, to ensure that all entry points, not just Ngwenya, are safe for tourists so that we can avoid future accidents. So we are hopeful that even going forward, they are going to put even more stricter measures, especially because we have an issue with the trucks coming into South Africa and then into Eswatini. Sometimes you find that there's a long queue. So it really does affect tourism because somebody who is sitting and thinking, if I want to use the border post, is it really worth it? What about the accident that happened? So our role is to ensure that Eswatini is safe in as much as you need to cross from the South African side, working hand in hand with the SA counterparts.
All right, so I see that most of these stats are more focused on international visitors coming into the country, but it has been a campaign that the authority has been running all along, promoting local domestic tourism rather. Have Eswatini embraced the culture of visiting their own tourist attractions? What are the figures like for the Easter season?
It's really getting there. The 22,000 that was actually recorded for Emaswati coming back into the country constitutes Emaswati locally, because it's just a round figure. Okay. So we have seen Emaswati going out low. I think our campaign, because what we are trying to push is that we need to ensure that Emaswati visit their own. They are aware, because you can't visit if you're not aware. So the first thing that we need to do is to educate Emaswati. What is tourism? What does it mean to us as a nation and as tourism authority? Secondly, we need to change the mindset, because if the mindset is not changed, people are not going to wake up and visit. True. So the 22,000 accounts for the day visits. So day visits, we mean Lungelele will move from Babane and go to Mlaula and do a game drive and actually have food there, or Lu will go to Malolocha and do a Kenopito and have lunch there. So that accounts for the day visits. And when you look at the spend in terms of the day visits, constitutes for a larger portion of the receipts as opposed to accommodation, because you can go for accommodation, you just sleep and not do any activities. But the day visits, which actually include Emaswati, have actually spiked, and we're quite excited about that because it helps us to build the receipts for the tourism GDP.
Okay, so lastly, Chunki, before I let you go, so what's the next big move for the authority or for Eswatini to stay in demand, not just on the map, but in demand?
It's events now, Lou. I'm glad you asked that question. We are going to Makoti Festival this coming weekend, and we are so excited that we're going to be receiving people from the neighboring countries, Lesotho, Botswana, Zambia, South Africa, Mozambique. So we're quite excited, and we want to say thank you so much to the Makoti Festival team, because we've seen them doing media rounds actually in the neighboring countries. So it means a lot to us, because when those people come into the country, they actually account for the visitations, and when they stay in hotels, they account for the accommodation, and when they spend, they actually account for the tourism spend. And Emaswati as well, because we know that Makoti attracts the domestic traveler who moves from wherever just to attend the events. Straightly from that, we are Lucho Festival, tickets are on, people are buying them, so now we have to prepare the outfits. Bushfire is coming. everything is sold out except for the Golden Lounge tickets are no longer available. So we are now pushing events, and we're also pushing the destination as a safe haven for the winter escape for the traveler that is looking for a destination around winter. So we are really pushing events. Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Chunki. That was the head of marketing at the Eswatini Tourism Authority, Chunki Dlamini, just breaking down the statistics for the Easter season. We do know that it is a vital period for the Eswatini tourism. We go for an ad break. We come back with Sanele Spia for today's markets.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. It's 22 minutes after 2. This is the final segment of Market View. This afternoon, we're now joined by Sanele Spia, in-house economist, to give us today's financial markets. Mr. Spia, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm all right. Great. Good afternoon to you, Tom.
Yeah. So what matters today in the U.S. and global markets today?
So what we're seeing right now is, all eyes are on that IMF World Bank Spring Conference, right? And from people who are in the room, they say you can literally cut the tension with a knife. That's happening within that room. Overall, it's an issue around tariffs and the retaliation, and in terms of what that is going to do to the global economy. But one thing that we've noted that came out of that was, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Bissett, they came out to say that no, these tariffs against China, they're just too high and it's very much unsustainable, right? And then he went on to say those must be brought down before they can even begin with talks. So now there's that sign of a turnaround or a weakening stance from coming within the Trump administration. So yesterday, that's what we saw the U.S. markets responding to. So that's why they were all somehow red, because there is a bit of hope and a glimmer of hope in terms of direction, in terms of where the markets are going to go, in terms of how rife this trade war is going to be. So if you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 together with the Nasdaq, they're all on the red, positing signs of growth, and just purely because of those movements that we're seeing and the talks around the tariffs and that turnaround. So that's what is pushing the U.S. markets. And if you then also add the fact that Trump has actually also loosened his stance around, around the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, saying that there has no intention to fire Mr. Powell. So that's where the markets were now starting to loosen up to and start to react to that, and we're seeing those positive gains. And then when we move to Europe, again, what we're seeing in Europe is more the domestic fundamentals playing in and chipping in. If you look at Germany, for example, you can see that the DAX has actually lost 82 points. Purely because when you look at the projections coming out of Germany, they show that the German economy is not going to grow this year. Recollect that that's an economy that's been struggling to find growth for the past decade or so. So they are looking for a turnaround. We saw Germany play around with the debt strategy last year, and we're just waiting to see what that is going to bring out in the markets. And in the UK, we're seeing those issues, the issue of uncertainty, and also an issue of uncertainty around the monetary policy path there. And then if we move on to Asia, the Asian markets are somehow mixed, with Japan on an upward trend and China again on an upward trend because of that stance coming out of the White House in terms of what they are looking at doing with China, making a deal with China and not going aggressive against China, being nice to China. And but what we're looking at today, early in the morning, you could see that the Asian car expo was not the hype that it was supposed to be, because there's a lot of fears around the tariffs. So investors still remain cautious around how to trade, because there seems to be no stable path right now that's been charted, right? And then you look into Japan again, the fact that the US is willing to make a deal somehow bolsters the Nikkei there, because that means also when it comes to Japan and opening up that automotive industry sector, President Trump might have to also be a bit lenient there. Coming down into South Africa, what we're seeing there is, the markets are quite positive within SA. That's been driven by the gold. We have the likes of Anglo Gold, Ashanti in the JSE, and if gold is doing so well in the markets today, and then obviously the stocks are going to gain. And also the GNU and the VAT reversal that we just saw. So markets are responding to that, because it seems the market-friendly policies of the DA seem to be winning. And then when you come into the commodities, gold continues to glitter, even though it has lost and starts beginning to come down from that 3,400 mark, because there's a bit of certainty and a bit of stability returning in terms of those Trump policies. And crude oil seeing somewhat of a surge, because again we know that OPEC will be cutting, will be increasing oil output, but also on the background we are seeing that stability within the Trump administration, signaling that the impact on growth may not be so severe. So the future contracts for oil are beginning to tick up. And then when you look into the currencies, we are seeing those mixed reactions again in terms of the Lilangeni exchange rate with quite a number of the major currencies. We're seeing the Lilangeni gaining against the Japanese yen and also gaining against the euro. The rand seems to be gaining as well against the dollar. The dollar, with what is happening in the US, the instability and the uncertainty there, that is now pushing, investors away from dollar holdings into other currencies, right? Thank you, Lumile.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Always a pleasure having you and give us these figures. That was the final segment, market analysis with Sanelis Bia. Well, there you have it. This is the end of our program. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again next week, Monday, at exactly 2 p.m. Have a lovely weekend.